outcasts from the mean streets of New Jersey, united by tragedy.
It's easy to kind of curl up and die when the world seems to fall down around you.
They are real-life superheroes who found hope in the ashes of catastrophe, creating passionate anthems for a lost generation.
We grew up being isolated, so it only makes sense to make music for people that are also isolated.
They're an inspiration for the broken, the bruised, and the forgotten.
We started a band to help people and to reach a lot of people.
These flamboyant musicians have overcome crushing addictions, fallen to the brink of suicide, sacrificing everything for a solitary vision.
I may not be alive today, and I made the decision with the help of the band to take a different path.
So the question is, how did these sonic saviors create an army of followers eager to fight the good fight?
It's just us, it's opening up your chest and showing what you have inside. Is it worth it? Yeah, absolutely.
My Chemical Romance was born to be.
My mother always wanted me to be a lawyer.
A doctor.
An architect like my father.
My dad insisted on medical school.
I was always expected to be a part of the family business.
A bank manager.
But
I was born to be.
On September 11, 2001, the world changed forever.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward, and freedom will be defended.
One man stood in shock, bearing witness to the tragic devastation. And in the wake of tragedy, he vowed to dedicate his life to making a difference.
You need to have some sense of hope, something to look forward to.
Gerard Way abandoned everything he knew, recruited a group of like-minded outsiders, and would lead them on a mission. Their goal? To fight evil with music. And so the chronicles of My Chemical Romance began. Gerard Way and younger brother Mikey grew up beneath the gray skies of Belleville, New Jersey, a dead-end town so violent the boys were forced to play inside when the sun went down.
We did grow up in a violent area of New Jersey, and I think it really actually had the reverse effect on us. Instead of making us violent, it made us, I feel, more intelligent. It made us want to use our brains. It made us really live in our own heads, but for our betterment.
It was this isolation that inspired the boys to create their own fantasy worlds, escaping in comic books, horror movies, and science fiction stories.
And where we grew up, how we grew up, we were just introverted outcasts.
Behind closed doors, older brother Gerard was a talented artist and a gifted singer. But his crippling shyness kept him from showing it off to the world. It was grandmother Elena who recognized Gerard's hidden talents and who urged him to explore his abilities. But in a bid to protect himself from cruel peers, he retreated into his shell and became a social outcast.
It gets very tribal in high school, and you're separated into cliques or groups. It feels like nobody's really there for you.
He immersed himself into a lonely fantasy world, writing stories and drawing comics, rarely emerging from his parents' basement. After graduating high school, Gerard was accepted into a New York City art school, where he began his formal training as an artist. With a wild imagination and knack for storytelling, he dreamt of becoming a comic book artist. But after a series of failed attempts, Gerard put his dreams on the back burner and accepted a job at a corporate animation network.
I was living in a basement and trying to make it as a comic artist. I hated it. I hated art. I wanted to make a difference.
Gerard became more and more depressed and pissed off at life. But one fateful morning, on his trek to work, Gerard's outlook was profoundly changed. The introverted young man stood in shock as he witnessed the collapse of New York's Twin Towers. And in a moment of sublime clarity, he unearthed his true calling.
It affected me pretty dramatically. I was very traumatized, and I was just like, art, you know. I just so wasn't into it. It wasn't doing anything for me. It wasn't doing anything for people to help them. And I said, let me just go, I guess, make music.
Gerard immediately began assembling a motley group of outcasts.
I tried to find people who were crazy enough to kind of follow me on that.
And convince them that they could change the world with rock and roll. His life or death resolve had the fledgling band eager to start their journey.
It became about living your life, you know, the way you wanted to. It became about destiny, fulfilling that destiny, not letting what people thought about you affect how you lived.
Gerard and drummer Matt Pelissier penned the band's first song, Skylines and Turnstiles, in response to the terrorist attacks. He turned to inspiration from his longtime heroes, bands like Iron Maiden, The Misfits, and Morrissey, who turned oppression and sorrow into songs that inspired millions of people. He recruited his little brother Mikey as the group's bass player. The easygoing novice always dreamt of playing music, but needed a push to action. Ray Toro was the most technically helm as lead singer of the group.
Do you think that's important for a frontman to be charming?
Charismatic, charming, a showman. I think it's important. I don't know where I fall about any of that.
And so, from a deadly brew of tenacity, hope, and destruction, My Chemical Romance was born. The music was undeniably special. Their collective experience made for a unique hybrid of goth, glam, metal, and punk. Before the band's legendary first show, the rookies drank heavily to ward off stage fright. Terrified and drunk, they blew the crowd away. Days before recording, the band recruited guitar genius Frank Iero as a second player.
I was in bands and nothing was just going right. I remember every day just wishing something would change or something would end.
His recently defunct group, Pensy Prep, practiced in the same studio, and he'd fallen in love with MCR's sound.
I really jumped in and didn't really know them that well, but like together we've grown up almost as a family.
In 2002, with a killer new lineup firmly in place, My Chemical Romance released their ambitious debut album, I Brought You My Bullets, You Brought Me Your Love. An ecstatic Gerard felt the album captured a triumphant and revealing moment for the brand new band. Lyrically, the goth punk offering was moody, introspective, and cathartic.
We grew up being isolated, so it only makes sense to make music for people that are also isolated.
After its release, MCR hit the road in a van donated by Gerard and Mikey's #1 fan and grandmother, Elena. With their violently passionate and feverish performances, the boys worked their way across the country, winning devoted admirers at every stop.
Every day we get up on stage, we go through the same emotions that we had while creating the songs. So we get up on stage, we're born, we live, and then we die. And hopefully we'll be born at the end of it.
They commanded the crowd, and on stage, Gerard was a man possessed, swearing, sweating, and screaming his way into music history.
Really keep it honest and sincere. It's just like when we get up there, it's like no joke, where nothing's contrived, nothing's planned out. Very few of the things I say, unless I feel they're important, I'll repeat.
MCR's love for comic books and horror movies influenced their stage personas and their ghoulish aesthetic.
I think the great thing about being in My Chemical Romance, though, is that people see us live and they kind of get over having crushes on us right away, and then they're just interested in the music. Because we either look horrific or, put fake cuts all over our faces or stuff to distance that kind of.
Though broken, exhausted after their grueling U.S. tour, the band had built up a sizable following.
This band kind of thrives on that kind of energy and the power we get from our fans. Amazing fans. The best in the world, I think.
They set out to make a difference, and the band had begun to find their purpose.
I look at every single show as like another chance to save our souls. Every single show is that to me.
Meanwhile, MCR's buzz was rapidly growing. They were touted as the next big thing.
I think there's certain things that come along with being in a band that are great things. They're just things that maybe we were
not suited for.
The boys were afraid of taking it to the next level.
The thing you have to understand is, like, we're real awkward people. And none of us are, like, real, like, you know, confident.
MCR attracted major label interest, but signing a deal would mean an end to their creative freedom. They turned down every offer, opting instead to carry on playing to pockets of devoted fans and struggled to find an identity.
Finding your identity as a band is what makes you a band. Without an identity, you're just a faceless record.
But were the boys blowing their chances for a place in the big leagues?
It's a weird situation to be thrown into.
And if they did find fame, could a group of depressive social outcasts manage the pressures of the spotlight?
Hey, we're My Chemical Romance. We're My Chemical Romance.
My Chemical Romance are rock's grandiose kings of pain. Their dramatic and emotional music has transfixed a generation of listeners, winning over critics who thought they were just another band capitalizing on teenage angst.
You play shows every night, right? And if there's 4 kids at that show that really get it, and you've done something to help them, then it's worth everything.
But for these bright young musicians, the path to self-discovery was a tough one.
In the past 4 years, it's been like a really short time, but we've lived a lifetime in that 4 years, and just really grown together as people.
The tragic events of 9/11 convinced Gerard Way and the rest of the band to make a pact to create powerful music that made a difference.
I gave up everything I had, which is already kind of nothing. But any kind of normalcy I gave up to do this.
While taking on the role as avengers for the underdog, the band was also a method to help cope with the boys' inner struggles. When money-hungry music execs got a taste of the band's incredible power, they wanted in. But instead of jumping at the opportunity, MCR stayed on the road, honing their chops and refining their image.
I mean, it's great that kind of shift happens. It's kind of like how you and your people start to get control in a way.
After a year on the road, they finally gave in and signed with Warner Brothers and Reprise Records and set about recording their second album.
I mean, I think what you do as an artist at this point in your life, when you've grown so much that you can't just repeat yourself, you have to really push yourself harder than ever before.
This time out, they had an endless supply of cash, new toys, and a state-of-the-art studio. Producer Howard Benson gave the band a valuable lesson in song structure, helping them to define their sound and storytelling technique.
Stories are missing from modern rock.
We're trying to be honest about the world and how dark it is, but then show you there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Their use of storytelling became intrinsic to the band's identity, something they had worked so hard for.
It is the longest quest you will ever undertake as a band. It either happens sooner or it happens later. It's just really starting to happen for us now.
Lyrically, they drew from life experiences, focusing on the Way brothers' recent devastating loss of their grandmother, Elena Lee Rush. Still reeling from Elena's death, the band got back on the road in anticipation of their upcoming album's release, joining the infamous Warped Tour, an out-of-control summer camp for punk rockers.
It's a hard tour, so you really gotta be very cooperative, and you can't go in with a shitty attitude.
Relishing an energizing return to the good times atmosphere, Gerard's partying quickly became excessive, and he often drank to cope with his shyness and stage fright. Soon, he was consuming a daily cocktail of antidepressants, alcohol, and cocaine. Ironically, the band's name was becoming a reality for Gerard. Interventions were fruitless. Gerard wanted to stay drunk. He depended on it to perform.
You play shows every night where thousands of people come to see you, and you're up on the stage playing, and it's hard.
Meanwhile, the group's second album, 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, was released in the middle of their private emotional firestorm. The record's slick, unusual sound was an instant hit with critics and fans, selling a whopping 11,000 copies in its first week, a major coup for an unknown band. But the exhilarating achievement was lost on the troubled frontman. It was a grim picture of the burdened singer suffering from the effects of his deadly addiction.
It's never a struggle really with them or the people you love. It's really within yourself. And that's what you find out, is that the struggle is all really internal.
And in July 2004, in a desperate bid to end the pain, Gerard's thoughts turned suicidal. He was in the depths of his darkest hour when manager Brian Schechter intervened. Miles away, Brian spent the night on his phone, talking down the frantic singer while the rest of the band slept. MCR's entire existence was in jeopardy. My Chemical Romance are the gothic leaders of a rock and roll revolution. The Furious Five from Jersey made it their mission to fight evil with song.
You write something that all of a sudden, like, people say, like, thank you, and you know, you pushing the limits and doing what you guys did really changed my life. That makes it worthwhile.
But the road to success is a tough one. After a grueling battle with a crippling drug and alcohol addiction, lead singer Gerard Way had sunk into a suicidal depression.
It's very difficult dealing with having a crash course in growing up, taking care of yourself, fame, success, all this other stuff that you didn't plan on. Sometimes it could eat out, your insides, eat your insides out.
MCR manager Brian Schechter stepped in at a crucial moment, fighting off the despairing singer's plan to end it all.
I might not be alive today, and I made the decision with the help of the band to take a different path.
The terrifying plunge was a rude awakening for Gerard. In the course of a week, Gerard found himself on a slippery path to sobriety, while the group made the difficult decision to replace drummer Matt Pellissier. Matt's argumentative attitude had led to escalating tensions, and Gerard's recovery hinged on a supportive environment. MCR hired soundman and friend Bob Breyer as a replacement. This was the turning point. The group had gained two valuable assets, a flawless new drummer and a new, focused, healthy frontman.
This band has a way of self-imposing some very difficult situations onto itself just to get the best results.
With a fresh outlook and a heightened sense of confidence, the band went all out when it came time to shoot the video for I'm Not Okay.
Face it, you're never gonna make it. I don't want to make it. I just wanna.
They had a green light to create the fantasy worlds they'd always dreamed of.
There's always been cinema for this band. We watch, everything from European films to Hong Kong action flicks to horror movies. That's where we draw, I think, our biggest influence.
The band followed up with ambitious videos for Ghost of You, a dramatic anti-war statement, and Helena, a touching homage to the Way brothers' late grandmother.
The whole video is pretty natural for us because we all kind of went through this. So it's just kind of like reliving a really bad day.
My Chemical Romance had successfully turned music videos into theatrical pieces of art.
It's almost this fictional fantasy world that we use as a metaphor for real life.
Their epic, sweeping stories thrust them into the forefront of the rock and roll game. But even though the group was fulfilling their dreams, they faced opposition. Shock rocker Marilyn Manson publicly slammed the group in Spin magazine, claiming they'd ripped off his goth persona and glam rock sound. They also drew heat from critics, who maintained the group was exploiting teenage angst in exchange for record sales.
Whether 100,000 people love us or not, we still face opposition, and it needs to be there. I think without the opposition, this band has nothing.
But MCR didn't have time for nasty accusations. They were too busy keeping their personal demons at bay. During their massively successful 2005 headlining tour, bassist Mikey Way began suffering from crushing on-stage anxiety attacks. What began as nagging feelings of self-doubt soon spun out of control when Mikey tried to numb his depression with drugs and alcohol. History was repeating itself.
You kind of want, you want what you can't have, I guess.
But Mikey hid his growing illness, diving headfirst into the recording process of the group's hotly anticipated third album. But the environment was tough on Mikey's state of mind.
We're in an extremely alienating situation, and
he found it very difficult to cope.
The band's attorney staged an intervention. Work on the album grinded to a halt, leaving the band to wonder how they'd pull through another personal tragedy.
When you dig really deep and you push each other so hard, like demons come out and you have to like fight them. And to do that on your own is really hard. So when you really find out that you're living with your family and these are the people that really have your back, it makes you feel, I don't know, more powerful, I guess, because you're fighting it together.
With the help of a team of psychologists, Mikey got treatment for his depression and was able to return to the band to record on the album.
Making this record was the hardest thing we've ever had to do as a band. And so the record really got us through it.
The traumatic experience brought the group closer than they'd ever been.
We're always there for each other to get each other through stuff.
And with morale at an all-time high, MCR triumphantly plowed through the rest of the album. Using their darkest memories as ammunition, the songs fell together naturally. The Black Parade was a highly conceptual goth pop masterpiece. Gerard revealed a new, leaner, slicker look, meant to represent a character from the band's alter ego, the Black Parade.
I think everybody has a strong duality. The Black Parade, in a weird way, represents that other side of us. When you face that other part of yourself, it helps you really kind of discover who you really are.
Critics lauded the album as a beautifully orchestrated tour de force, and the boys enjoyed their biggest success to date. But MCR's newfound fearlessness was more important than glittering accolades.
I think we've seen it. We've seen it all and done it all at this point, and I think we're smarter for it.
And in the midst of the fanfare, Mikey Way got married to longtime girlfriend Alicia Simmons.
It was after a show.
Okay.
It was in Vegas. We had a little ceremony set up. We played the show. Went backstage. Our parents were all there.
Mikey has since taken a brief leave of absence from the group to soak up life as a newlywed.
It's really exciting. You know, the fact of the matter is we've been going at this 6 years non-stop. So, you know, life just happens.
While Mikey relishes in home life, Mike Chem pushes forward on their mission to spread powerful and passionate music to devoted fans across the globe. My Chemical Romance have become musical heroes for an entire generation. Out of the rubble of 9/11 came a young outcast who faced his fears, took control of his destiny, and in turn formed one of the most inspirational bands in rock history. My Chemical Romance have nearly been torn apart by addiction and mental illness, but they've proven to themselves and the world that they are capable of over.
These guys, they're not going to do anything. Kind of prove a lot of people wrong, but we need to keep proving people wrong in order for this band to exist.
These avant-garde tastemakers have traveled a hard road out of the grim New Jersey streets, leaving behind a trail of tears, fears, and fresh hope in their wake.
You need to have some sense of hope, something to look forward to. I mean, we're in a lot of difficult situations. The bottom line is we love playing shows, we love making music together, and we love the fans.
My Chemical Romance was born to be.
My parents still dress me, so yeah, they do all right. They pick out the bulletproof vest and the makeup, and they help a lot with what I wear.
I was going to talk about how I voted for the new color of Eminem. Which one'd you pick? Magenta.
Gerard, sign a shirt so we can get laid. I think they're very misled. I'll do that for them, but they won't get laid.